Maseches Kesubos Daf Nun can be divided into two separate sugyas. The first half is the Gemara's discussion of more takanas that were made in Usha when Sanhedrin were in Usha. We'll have the last of the three brought by Rabbi Allah. Then we'll have two more. And the Gemara will also talk about some agadata related to those takanas and how they were made. Towards the end of this part of the daf, the Gemara will discuss the sugya of supporting one's children, which is what we were discussing as part of the three takanas earlier. Then we get to the second half of the daf, which will be about the question of when a daughter collects the Tanai Ksuba that she needs to be supported, can that be collected from movable property, or is that only from real estate? Gemara will bring a number of incidents that happened with Tanaim and Amoraim relating to that subject. So let's begin. We've seen two takanas of the three brought by Rav Law. Now we get the third one, takanas that were made in Usha. So the third one brought by Rav Law is that they made a rule that somebody who's going to give tzedakah should not give more than a fifth of his property away. The Gemara brings a brayso that says that as well. Someone who's mevazbe, somebody who spreads out, who scatters his wealth around, should not scatter more than a fifth. Otherwise, if he gives away too much, he'll end up himself having to take tzedakah if he becomes poor on his own. The Gemara says there was someone who wanted to give more than a fifth and he was stopped by someone else. There's two versions as to who these people are. The first version is we don't know who the one who wanted to do it, but the one who stopped him was Rav Yeshivov. Second version is that Rav Yeshivov is the one who wanted to do it, and Rabbi Akiva is the one who stopped him. Now, what is the source of this halacha? How do you know you should not give more than a fifth? So Mar quotes Rav Nachman, Rav Yaakov, that is learned out of Yaakov Avinu, when he promised to give Meiser, he said Aser Asrenu. That's Aser once and Asrenu a second time, two Meisers. So a tenth, one, and then another time a tenth adds up to 2/10, which is a fifth. So the Gemara says, therefore the most you should give is a fifth. The Gemara asks once, what do you mean? A tenth of what's left is not a tenth, it's only a ninth of the total, so you'll end up giving only 19% instead of 20%. The Gemara says no, because it says Asrenu. That means I'm going to give Meiser, and then I'm going to give that amount again, Aser, and then Asrenu. I'll give that same Meiser again. So whatever the amount that was the first, 10% I'm going to give again, and therefore it's going to end up being 20%, so it's a fifth. Now, the Gemara points out that these takanas of Usha were brought by Rav Ilah in order drop in the number of people that they are quoted in the name of. The first one was Rav Ilah in the name of Rish Lakish in the name of Rav Yosef Bar Chanina. The second one was Rav Ilah in the name of Rish Lakish without Rav Yosef Bar Chanina. And this final one is just Rav Ilah, not in anybody's name. So the Gemara says that we get smaller as we go along here, and therefore it's important to remember the order of the takanas so that we will know who were the people that were involved in being quoted for each one. We have a simon for that. Ketanim kasvu ubizbazu. Children write and spread out. Children refers to the takana that a man has to support his children. That was the first of the three. The second one is if somebody writes over his property to his children. That's kasvu. And the third one is this one, bizbazu, spreading out one's wealth. Now the Gemara brings other takanas that were quoted as having been set up in Usha. So the Gemara quotes Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says they made a takana in Usha, that a person should be forbearant with his son who doesn't want to learn for up till 12 years. After 12 years, he should start making his life miserable and forcing him to learn, Rashi says, by withholding food even, and by hitting him with a strap. Now, the Gemara says, is that correct? But we have that Rav said to Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, who was a Rebbe, he said that don't accept any Talmidim less than 6 years old. From 6 years old, feed him like a cow, meaning stuff him up, fatten him up good with Torah. So you see that you do force him, you do feed him against his will already from age 6. Someone says, yes, you force feed him from age 6, but to actually be Yorid L'Chayav, to actually force him in these very strict methods, that's only from 12 years old and up. The Gemara says a second answer would be that it depends what you are teaching him. From age 6 to age 12, you force him Mikro, but not Mishnah. And from age 12 and up, you force him even Mishnah. So, therefore, that's what was meant when he said force feed him, he meant Mikro. But Mishnah is only later. The Gemara quotes support for that. Abai says that he quotes his aim, which refers to his step mother. Abai never knew his mother. So he says that my stepmother said that up till age 6 is for learning Mikra, for learning Psukim. From age 10 is for learning Mishnah. From age 13 is the time to start practicing fasting. Now Rashi points out this doesn't mean age 13 and up. It means the 13th year, which is age 12 to 13 for a boy. For a girl, it's 1 year younger, from age 11 to age 12. Now, obviously, it has to be that last year, because from age 12 and up for a girl, she's already chayiv deraisa. From age 13 and up for a boy, is already chayiv deraisa. I think Gemara just quotes some other Agadata that was quoted by Abai in the name of his stepmother as far as ages. So Abai said that a child on his 6th birthday who is bitten by a scorpion is not going to be healed unless you do a particular healing procedure, which is you take the gallbladder of a white vulture and you put it in beer. So you use the two of them as you make him drink the beer, and you rub the gall on the child. And another thing is a 6-year-old who is stung by a bee on his 6th birthday is not going, this is a 1-year-old, is not going to survive if he's stung by a bee unless you take a special fibrous woody thing that goes around the palm trees, put that in water, and you give him the water to drink, and you rub the pine wood on him. Alright, the Gemara goes further to discuss learning and when to begin. The Gemara says, Rav Katina says anybody who brings his son into the Beis Medrash, into yeshiva, to start learning from age 6, younger than age 6, he's going to run after him and he's not going to catch up to him. So two versions as to what these means, two opposite versions. One is that he's not going to catch up to him as far as trying to restore his health. Torah makes a person weak, and he's too young for it, and therefore he's never going to be fully healthy. And the other pshat is that his chaverim are never going to catch up to him in learning. He's going to be head and shoulders ahead of them. The Gemara says they're not contradictory. It could be that they're both true. He'll be physically weak, but in learning he'll be ahead of everybody else. Or another possibility is that we're referring to two different situations. One is referring to a strong child. One is referring to a weak constitution. If there's a weak constitution, it'll affect his health. If there's a strong constitution, he'll be fine, and he'll be ahead of everybody else. All right, now the Gemara goes on to another takana, which is made in Usha, and this is something you've seen quoted earlier. This is that when a husband inherits his wife's property, he has the halacha of a buyer, and as the one who bought it from the time of the marriage. That means as follows. We're talking about nichsei mulug. Nichsei mulug is property that the wife owns, she brings into the marriage, and it stays hers throughout the duration of the marriage. If it gets devalued, she takes the loss. If it increases in value, she takes the gain. However, the husband has a right to use the payers of it. He has the right to the use of it and to profit from it, although he does not own the principle of the property itself. Now, if the wife dies before him, then he inherits it. So generally the rule of an inheritor is he only inherits things that she owns at the time that she dies. If she were to sell this property, which she can because she owns the principal, if she were to sell it, then the halacha midaraisa would be that the husband doesn't get anything because there's nothing there for him to inherit. Now, the takana usha was that the husband has the halacha of a buyer who bought it from the beginning of the marriage. That means that he bought it before she sold it. He bought it already from the time that they got married. Now, this only takes place retroactively when she dies, because otherwise he may never inherit her at all. But if she does die, then retroactively from the time that he bought it, from the time that he married her, is considered like he bought it. As we've seen on the daf yesterday, it's not for all halachas that that's true, but it is as far as this halacha, that if she goes and sells the property during their marriage, during her lifetime, the sale is voided when he inherits it, because it's like he bought it earlier. Now, therefore, he has a right to take it away from whoever it is that bought the land. Now, the Gemara quotes an incident. The Gemara says, Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef found Rabbi Avo, who was standing in a crowd of people in Usha, and he said, who's the one that said this halacha in Usha? And he said, it's Rabbi Chanina. He learned it from him 40 times, and then it was like he had it in his pocket. He knew that is the halacha. Now, the Gemara refers back to the mitzvah and the properness of a person supporting his children financially, even though he's not obligated to do so. The Gemara quotes passing Tehillim and says, Ashrei Shemrei Mishpat Oised Tzedakah B'chal Eis. Great is one who watches justice and does charity at all times. Somewhere asks, how is it possible to do charity all times? Every minute you do in charity? The Gemara says, yes. The Rabbi Sinu in Yavne said it's referring to somebody who supports his children. He doesn't have to, but if he does do that, they're constantly dependent on him. He's constantly doing chesed with them at all times. Now, Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says something similar. He says it's not referring to your own children, it's referring to somebody who takes in a yasam, an orphan, or a yisoma, a girl who's an orphan, and he raises them, and he feeds them, and takes them to their wedding, so he does complete chesed with them. Okay, another pasuk, it says Hon va'osher bevesav v'tzedakasa omedas la'ad. He has wealth and riches in his house, and his charity extends forever. What does that mean? His charity extends forever. Or Rav Huna and Rav Chizda. One says it talks about somebody who learns Torah and teaches it to others. That's charity. That's a gift that keeps on giving for all times. And the other one says it's somebody who writes a Sefer Torah, a Navi or a Sefer Kesubim, and lends it to others so that they can keep learning from it. Again, his tzedakah, his mitzvah continues on forever. Third pasuk the Gemara quotes, "Revanim levanecha shalom ha'Yisrael." If you see sons to your sons, it'll be peace in Yisrael. What does it mean? If you have grandchildren, there'll be peace. What does that mean? Levi says once you have grandchildren, then you're not going to end up having chalitza or yibum. Therefore, you'll have peace. You're not going to have a marriage which is contested. So, because your son had a son. Shmuel Nachmani says it's once you have grandchildren, they're not going to be fighting over the inheritance because your children will inherit and their children will inherit them. You don't have to worry about odd inheriting situations where the inheritance goes to a father or to an uncle or a brother or something like that. All right, now the Gemara is going to go to the sugya of the Tanai Ksuba. As we said, there are two Tanai Ksuba. When a man marries a woman, he writes in the Ksuba that her daughters will be supported from the property. They will get support. That's the Tanai Ksuba for the girls. And for the boys, is a Tanai Ksuba that if she dies before she has a chance to collect her Ksuba, the value of that Ksuba will be given to her sons over and above any inheritance which is divided up amongst the sons of other women equally. So the Gemara says that the halacha that the girl inherits and she's supported, that only comes from real estate. She only has a right to take that support from real estate, not from metaltal. So Gemara says that Rav Yosef was sitting in front of Rav Hamnuna, and Rav Hamnuna was sitting and he was saying that just like a son only inherits real estate, his daughter is only supported from real estate. So everybody started screaming at him, a son only inherits real estate? What are you talking about? A son inherits everything. There's no halacha that movable property is not inherited. So Gemara says that Rav Yosef said maybe you meant to say that this right to inherit the ksuba of the mother is what we call ksubas benin and dichrin, that Tanai ksuba, that's only inherited, that's only taken from real estate. And this is true because ksuba is something which is only collected from real estate. Ksuba is only collected from meshubadim that people know and they can be wary of not to buy that land because it's meshubah to the ksuba, and that only refers to real estate, not to movable stuff. Therefore, ksuba is only collected from real estate, and any Tanai ksuba is also only collected from real estate. Therefore, the ksubas b'nei dichrin, that the sons get the wife's ksuba, that is only connected from real estate, and that is compared to and is linked to in our last Mishnah the support for the daughter, which is also promised in the ksuba, that's also only collected from real estate. So that's halacha as it said by Rav Hamnuna, and that's how Rav Yosef explained Rav Hamnuna, and Rav Hamnuna said, "You are a chacham, so you understood what I said." The Gemara goes further. Rav Chia bar Yosef says that Rav supported girls from chiti de aliyah, the wheat of aliyah. That means that he allowed the girls to take this support from wheat of aliyah. What's aliyah? So the Gemara is going to say, it depends what you mean when you said support. Support can mean one of two things. It can mean what we've been discussing, the support that's promised to their mother as part of the Tanai Ksuba. In that case, if Rav says that they take from chiti, from wheat, that means that Rav's passing that they could take from movable property, and therefore there's some takana that says that they are allowed to collect from movable, because really they're not. The rice, as we said, they only collect from real estate. So Rav, when he says aliyah, is referring to some upper floor, some takana that was made in an aliyah. Or Rav could be referring to parnasa, and that is that a father gives a certain amount of property to his daughter to take into the marriage. That's a nadan, that's a nadunya, that's part of making her favorable to marry. And that, if the father dies before she gets engaged, we evaluate how much he would have given based on how we understand his generosity to be, and that we set aside from his property, we give to her to take into the marriage. Now, the Gemara therefore says, if that's what we're referring to, then we're not referring to the ksuba collection for the daughter, we're referring to the nadan. The Gemara calls that parnasa. The Gemara says, in that case, aliyah means the father's generosity. We evaluate the father's generosity to see how much he's willing to give. So the Gemara says, so which of these two things did Rav mean? So the Gemara quotes Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, who says that there was a takana that they should get from the metalton in the aliyah. The Gemara quotes Rav Banai, the brother of Rabbi Chia bar Abba, who says that there was metaltalin diasmi that came before Shmuel, and Shmuel said, go be mefarnes them. So the simple understanding, he said zun them, so that means to give them to eat, and that's from metaltalin. So the Gemara wants to say that would support the idea that there is a takana that the girls get from metaltalin, even though deraisa they only get from real estate. The Gemara says, no, that's not what he was referring to. He could also have been referring to parnasa, could have also been referring to the nadan. You don't see anything from there to help make this question clearer. The word zun could refer to parnasa. That's what our whole question was in the first place. Now, we don't know if he holds like Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef that you had this takana or not. And then again, we know that Shmuel definitely holds that you do give a nadan and you evaluate the generosity of the father. So he could have been saying, as he paskin elsewhere, that salacha could have been referring to that as well. Now, the more quotes some incident, as more says, a story that happens in Naharda, and the judges there, they awarded the support to the girls from movable property. In Pumpadisa, they had the same thing. And Rav Chana bar Bizna collected for them from a movable. And Rav Nachman said to both of them, you should make them return it. It goes back to the sons, to the inheritors. It was incorrect that you made them collect from movable. The girls don't have a right to collect from real estate. If you don't, I will take your houses away from you and use it to pay off what you incorrectly ruled gets taken away from the sons. More because Rav Ami and Rav Asi wanted to do this halacha. They wanted to have girls be supported from metaltalin, from movable property. So the Gemara said that Rav Yaakov bar Idi said something Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish wouldn't do. How could you go ahead and do it yourself? Similarly, Rav Elazar, the Gemara says, wanted to also give support to the girls from the movable property, and Rav Shimon ben Eliakim said before him, I know that you are trying to do Lifnim Mishur Sadin. You know that this is not the halacha. You're not going to force the boys to give it. You just want to convince them. The problem is that people will see that they're giving it, and they'll assume that you force them, and that that's the halacha. People are going to learn a wrong halacha from you. Mar says there was a case again for Rav Yosef, and he said, give the girls from the Tamarim the dates that fell off the tree and are on the ground. That's metaltalin, movable. So Abaye said, would you do that for a Baal Chayv? Would you allow anybody else to collect? You know that you only collect from property, from real estate. You can only take away real estate from an inheritance. So Gemara says, he said, I wasn't referring to whatever fell off, I was referring to what's about to fall off. That's still attached to the tree, and therefore it's still considered real estate. So we're saying, well, we have a rule that anything which is about to come off is considered like it fell off already, and therefore it's real estate. So the Rebbe said, again, I meant it's about to fall off, but it's not quite yet. It still needs to grow a little bit more, and therefore it is not considered ready to fall off, so it's not metaltal and mamish, but that's what I was referring to. You should give him those things which are still considered real estate.